Hello. How you doing,
What's
Nick?
up, dude?
Good to
Good. How
see
you
you.
doing?
It's
You
going
too.
good. Yeah, we'll give people a couple seconds here to join, just since we kind of popped in here.
For sure.
How's your day going? You got any fun weekend plans?
It's going good. It's going good. Weekend plans. I think I'm building an arbor. My wife has requested a woodworking style arbor for the backyard. So I gotta
Okay.
number one, figure that out. And
Yeah.
then number
Have
two,
you
I gotta actually build it.
have you built an arbor? Are you a carpenter?
I do some furniture making. I do some like woodworking in my spare time, but like not at all professional. Like it is very much just like doing my best.
An act of love.
Yes, exactly. I got like a closet valet project I'm working on right now for my sister-in-law. So
Wow.
it's like a
Okay.
little bit pretty nice, but it's not like I wouldn't call it fine furniture.
Okay. Well, I'm learning stuff already in this LinkedIn live we're doing.
You
So
didn't know you were going to be here for that, right? Like
I did not know that. I was not expecting
completely. It's
that.
just value left and right with me.
Totally. Yeah, I might need to send a couple projects your way.
For sure, for sure. I'll give you the friends and family discount.
Well, appreciated that. Thank you. All right, we got some people coming in. Feel free to comment on the side, say hello, maybe where you're, logging in from. We'll say hi
Yeah.
too, and have your questions ready to go for us as we kind of run through things. I'll do a quick rundown of some of the topics we're going to be cover. If you're new to these LinkedIn lives, joining us, we like to keep them short, action packed. As much action as we can give.
Right.
Data packed as much as we can. Today's topic, we are going through kind of the current state of the marketing agency industry, and then also we'll kind of hit on job market a little bit too within marketing creative. We have an awesome person here for doing that. Nick, you want to give a little bit of a background about you, your company, and what we can hope to learn from you too today?
Yeah, for sure. Number one, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I love that. Like this just kind of came up organically. And I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, you want to jump on? You sound like you know what you're talking about. Um, my background, I do a bunch of research and consulting work in the digital agency space. So for like the last 10 years, 10 years ago, I was like, man, there's not much out there. There's not much good like quality data out there. Um, I can do that. I was a Wall Street research analyst for a while, so I know that like process. And so I took that process and just said, okay, well, let's apply that to the digital agency space.
Awesome.
So did a bunch of research, and now I do consulting work based on that research. So it's like actually data backed, which is nice to have.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably no better person to talk to who has a pulse on so many different agencies and what's going on out there. And I know we were just talking beforehand about this, that you're even like up to date, getting interesting stuff
Oh yeah,
coming through on surveys and talking to people and stuff. So we'll definitely hit on quite a bit of that. Our goal today is to hit on how agencies are getting worked on the jobs, and we might even touch on AI stuff too. Hello, Colleen. Hello, Kristen. Hello, Mara. Thanks for all joining us and commenting. A little bit about me really quick, and then we're just going to jump right into it. So I'm John. I'm one of the managing partners here at Celarity. We do marketing, creative, staffing, and recruiting. So we basically place roles at companies that Nick is working with and talking to, these marketing, creative, and digital agencies. We also work with large corporate and mid-sized companies too. All right, so house cleaning out of the way. Let's jump into things. Nick, what is going on out there in the marketing agency world? Like, what is the current state of things?
yeah. It's choppy, to say the least.
Okay.
Choppy. Throughout the first year or first of the year, we saw some green shoots. We saw some like sales pipelines filling back up after a pretty rough 23. And and what's been weird is like these projects are starting, they're stopping. People like big brands will be like, we're gonna push this off till second quarter. And then some agents, dude I was talking to yesterday was like, I just got off a call where all of a sudden it's an emergency now. And he's like, well, I didn't staff for this. I didn't plan for this. So
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of that where it's like it's pipelines are just weird, and it makes it tough to like capacity plan for from an agency perspective.
Yeah, that backs up a lot of the clients that I've been talking to too. A lot of clients used to working more monthly retainer focused or approving like
Mhm.
an entire project in different phases, like we talked about. But now it's kind of being more pieced out, more
Mhm.
project based costed. And to your point, really hard to kind of plan your staff and what's
Oh my god.
availability is. So
For sure, for sure. And, like, I get it's better for, like brands can just do that, right? Like, it's easy for them, But when you're the actual agency and you have to have that talent like on deck, ready to go, ready to execute on this stuff,
Right.
it's just tough. It's just tough. So yeah, we're seeing, like, I'm seeing the same thing that you just mentioned, like where these projects are becoming, used to be like these year-long retainers are now like project based, and they're not project based in the sense that it's like $1 million retainer is now $1 million project. It's $1 million retainer is now like 3 phases of $1/3 each, and that's even harder. That's just not enjoyable.
Yeah, especially right. Like if phase 2 involves like a different skill set, right?
Oh my
Data
gosh, yeah.
work, mobile work, and phase 1's more strategy or copy or whatever. That's really hard to like hold staff or keep people busy on the bench, right? So like
Yeah.
how are these agencies dealing with kind of that weird flux?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I mean, I was working with one a little while ago, and they, I don't know, right around 100 employees, maybe 150 employees. They had that same amount of talent just in freelancers kind of on the bench. So they could essentially double up their capacity at the drop of a hat. And I like that's interesting from a few perspectives, but that brings up some questions of like, what's the agency, and are you a staffing agency at that point? Like, are
Yeah,
they competing with you then? Like,
yeah, and previously this agency didn't use as much freelancer bench. Is this kind
no,
of
they
new?
had like they were full employees, like they were sizable. And then they ran into some challenges in 23, like
Hmm.
not everybody, but like a lot of other agencies did, and cut pretty much in half, maybe a little bit lower.
Hmm. Yeah, that's it's interesting. It's kind of backing up some of the stuff that we've been seeing too, and a lot of the people I've been talking to getting into freelancing, getting into fractional work in the last year. I think we saw a stat out there that 38% of the U.S. workers took a gig project in 2023, which was an all-time high last year. So there's definitely people, looking to do more of this stuff, as well as I guess clients looking to use people in more freelance and fractional. Is that kind of backing up to what you've been seeing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the ability for agencies to do that kind of like to have that staffing on the bench, they're
Yeah.
going to like lean more towards that freelancer space. It fits better for them.
And
Um,
is there certain like roles that you're seeing too that kind of lend itself more to the freelancer side that they're leaning on, like versus full time? Like, I guess what kind of demand are you seeing for specific roles and skills?
yeah, that's a good question. And this, I guess this jumps the gun on the AI thing a little bit, but it's
It's okay.
much
We
less
don't
like
need to go in order here, Nick.
it's much less on the stuff that AI is good at, like that copywriting or iterating design, stuff like that. Those
Yeah.
are the ones that I'm seeing a little bit less in demand. Those are a
Hmm.
little more challenging for people to secure a role in. And it's that weird, like, it's not it's not the senior talent that seems to be having trouble. Um, it's the more junior, the more entry level stuff that seems to be like that pipeline to senior seems like that could be a challenge in maybe 5 years.
Just because there's not as many entry level people getting in, is what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like if they're not, so think about like how you train up a designer or you train up a copywriter or something like that. Um, there's a lot of like mentoring. There's a lot of
Yeah.
in-house kind of training, a lot of stuff you learn on the job that if you're freelancing, it's a different muscle. It's a different set of muscles.
Yeah.
So if you expect to get somebody who is a freelancer for 10 years into a senior design role, where all of a sudden a lot of that role is managing and mentoring people and more junior people, that's just a different thing that they haven't typically had to do.
Yep. Yeah, and what I'm noticing too, in a lot of the requests we're seeing, so like the skill sets that we're seeing requested too, is we're seeing the same thing, that less demand for content producing, like copywriter, designer
Mhm.
roles than we used to see in the past. We're seeing a lot more requests for more like paid search type
Oh
roles, like
yeah.
implementing those programs, which is interesting and probably makes a lot of sense if a lot of people are getting their eyes on ROI. They want to see like this ad's returning this kind of spend. So seems like a lot of focus around that stuff. I know you mentioned dev work too. You've seen kind of a little bit of a pullback and kind of maybe related to AI from what you've been seeing or hearing too, or or what
Yeah, I
is?
think there's a piece of it. I think there's a piece of like the general story that I've heard is instead of staffing up, when demand does come back for an agency, instead of staffing up and hiring 10 more devs, um, what they've been able to do with AI, Copilot, and the various plugins for different dev environments, they've been able to do more volume with the same number of devs, or just a
Mm,
few more devs. So that kind of like 2 years ago, there was a mad dash to hire devs. It
yeah,
was brutal out there. The salary increases that we were seeing in our salary surveys were like, uh-oh, how do you need to readjust? Like my big like drum that I beat for that year and the year after was raise your prices.
yes,
Raise your prices because you're going to destroy your margins with what you have to pay to acquire talent at this point. And
yeah,
now you see a bunch of layoffs from different tech companies. You see like a big challenging market out there, and the agencies just aren't picking them up. Like
mm,
they're like, well, we don't have that internal demand right now.
yeah. No, that's kind of backing up a lot of what we're seeing too. And it's interesting the different levels, like you mentioned, versus junior entry level versus senior. There's a big trend right now of fractional talent, and I
Oh,
guess how that would be different from a definition standpoint of freelance that we've been seeing. So fractional is more of like a director, VP plus
mhm.
level position coming in for more longer term, but part time at more mid-sized companies and agencies doing strategy work and stuff like that. Usually not so much execution type work. The freelancer side is more project based, like gig based,
Mhm.
turnaround, quick turnaround kind of stuff, like requests. So we're seeing like a lot of the talent I'm talking to, a lot of them are going out and doing a lot of this fractional work and finding clients. So there's an appetite on the client side, on corporate, especially for this kind of part-time flexible team. So it's been an interesting trend that we've seen on that side. Um, and the AI stuff, like we talked about, it's interesting that it seems to be hitting the dev talent. Personally, I have not heard clients replacing roles with AI
Mhm.
in the last year. But to your point, like it might just be more of a demand thing that if someone leaves, there's just not the work level
Mm. Yep.
backfill roles, and that's what I'm hearing a lot of. And interestingly enough, too, the stats for layoffs this year, when they cite the reasons for layoffs, only 1% of the layoffs were listed for AI right now. So that's not to say in the
Right.
future that it may be a bigger deal replacing roles, but as of right now, that's not a reason being given for the lack of openings or the layoffs. Number one reason for layoffs right now is budget cuts, and then number two is restructuring. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting. That's. I would also wonder how many of those reasons for layoffs are accurate. Like,
well, that's true. It's kind
so
of
like, there's that whole space of like, we're
yeah.
not going to say we're replacing everybody with AI, but we're replacing everybody with AI. Like,
Well, and to like when we talked about, right, it's like some people might be more efficient now with some of the tools. So it's like, do you
yeah,
label that as AI or is that a
right,
restructuring for not needing as
right,
many people? So you're right. It's kind of like a
yeah,
data categorization problem.
for sure,
Um,
for sure. But it's interesting that you're seeing that too. Like that backs up a lot of the stuff that I was seeing. That's nice to see that corroborated for sure.
Yeah, and interestingly too, like so in our client requests that come to us, usually we have a pretty good insight in the kind of projects they're working on. And, in the past, it might have been big CRM implementations, it might have been new websites, social campaign kickoffs. We're not seeing actually a lot of these like big AI projects. Like we're not
Mm,
even being asked for people with so much like, hey, we need someone to come in and set up this AI thing for like so I am a little skeptical about some of the headlines saying AI is taking jobs right now. I think it definitely potentially could in the future, but I'm not hearing that from clients as so much. So,
no, I think you're right on that. I agree with that 100%. I think part of that challenge is like agencies exist because they're better at tech, typically new tech,
yes.
than
Yeah.
an in-house brand. That's just how it works, and that's why a in-house team might not have that kind of demand for AI talent because even if they had it, they might not know what to do with it. So
Yeah.
they would go to an agency. What I've seen is a ton of agencies, maybe a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, started pivoting and said, okay, we need to figure this out, this AI thing out, so we can offer it as a service to our clients. So
Right.
they're the enablers. They're the ones that would be having that in-house kind or in like I guess in-house for lack of a better term, but
Yeah.
they would have that talent within them, the agency, and they would sell that talent then and that expertise back to the brand.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. A couple agency owners that I've talked to in the last few months specifically cite using a lot of those tools for research, saving time on like
Mhm.
keyword research programs, like
Yeah.
some project management process related stuff, or like taking notes on meetings and summarizing things
Mhm.
has been huge for them. So yeah, it's been interesting. Those are definitely the trends I've seen the most use cases. Some on the client side I've heard for AI use cases, a lot of like brand standard type stuff. So if somebody's
Mm.
writing
Interesting.
content or yeah, or even like, hey, I have this graphic or asset that I need to put across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook,
Mhm.
LinkedIn. They're all different sizes. Like they've been using a lot of those programs to help do a lot of that production design level work. So I have heard of some use cases there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So what else is going on? I mean, we could dive into some more job stuff. Is there any other interesting things you think or questions from people that they're kind of curious of what's going on out there? We're happy to use some time here. We're doing pretty good. But yeah, what do you guys all want to hear? And Nick, what are you interested in sharing more about?
I'll wait a second for some questions, but I think there's definitely some interesting things happening specifically on the like jobs front.
Yes.
Like I love that whole kind of topic because of just how much it's changed in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Like that digital transformation pull in once like 2021 hit and big brands realized, oh, we have to do things virtually. Like that's the way the world's going. They
Yeah.
pulled in so much spend that was going to be allocated out over the next few years. And now we're in this kind of lull of like, oh,
Mm,
we spent it. We spent it. Interest rates are ginormous. Money isn't free anymore. So we're not investing in this kind of grow at all costs thing. We
yeah.
need to be more focused on ROI. Thus, we're going to be more focused on headcount internally. And we're also going to be a little more like, I don't know, stingy with what they spend at an agency.
Yep, and pulling the trigger on budget stuff. Valerie
Absolutely.
said she agrees with the stuff we've been seeing for agency AI use cases, and
Nice.
how they've been using it. Interestingly too, some parallels between that I've noticed and we talked about between agencies pitching work and job searchers.
Mhm.
This like weird phenomenon of ghosting on both
Oh my
sides.
gosh. Yes.
I've never heard
Yes.
from, some of these agency owners the last few months I've talked to and worked with them getting ghosted on proposals. You'd think spending hours with clients and pitching and sending over like a very detailed pitch, you'd think they'd at
Mhm.
least say, hey, it's delayed or XYZ, but they're getting ghosted just like job seekers have been. It's really, is that kind of what you're hearing too? Because it's weird out there.
I mean, it's yes. It fits into that kind of like jerky start stop of this
Hmm.
weird project work because stuff's not it's not as heavily retainer anymore. Those are harder to sell.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's unfortunately a newish reality.
Yeah.
They you and it brings up this idea of like I don't know. I caution clients against focusing on RFIs anyway and RFPs. Like that's kind of a horrible way to approach sales. It's a necessary evil, but as
Yeah.
soon as you can get out of that, become a preferred vendor and only do it when necessary. But even in that space, when you're dedicating a team sometimes to fill out all of this like multi-page, multi-hundred page sometime RFPs, and then you get ghosted, it brings up the is that project worth it? Like you're shooting margin in the head at that point. Like what's the point of it? There's easier ways to go do work with and do good work with other people that are going to respect your time. And
Yeah.
I think that that's like it's different if there's a reason and they're communicative about the reason a
Yeah.
project is delayed. That's fine. That is a normal working relationship. Things happen when you get into this space of like devoting real resources to something and then them not respecting you enough to have that communication with you, that's a spot where it's like choose, up your positioning agency and choose better clients because they're not all the work is worth it.
Yeah, it's It's interesting that the parallels, right, between the job searching and like you were mentioning with the agencies pitching. One other frustration I've been hearing a lot of too is the process of getting a job as being so elongated. I think it used to be, I want to say the numbers was like 2-ish months a year or two ago for job seekers. Now it's 3+, and a lot of the director VP level talent I'm talking to, we're looking at 6+ months. And the hoops that they're having them jump through, like we're talking that 6-month process. I talked to many people who started a conversation with a client in January and just wrapped up those conversations last week for a job search for that same company.
Yes.
And they're throwing like random projects at them at the end of the line, like out of nowhere. It's just a weird time.
Do you think that's pushing that fractional piece? Because I've noticed definitely like some of the higher end talent is like, I'm not going to put up with that. My sales cycle for a fractional CFO or whatever would be would be faster than getting a job.
Like, yeah, I believe that.
Kind of what's pushing it?
Yeah, the same talent that are going out and doing these fractional projects, I've heard that they are picking up clients, and it seems quicker, honestly, than the job. And you think about it, right? Like it's a flexible contingent situation for the client.
Right.
It's usually less expensive than hiring the VP full time. If if the work goes away or business changes, it's an expense line item. It's not a full-time salary. It's not a compensation package working out. So I can see how a lot of mid-sized clients that I've seen would be very attracted to that fractional space. That's that kind of backing up what you're seeing too, because that's kind of the setup I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I've just noticed the fractional talent that's out there. I just did a survey with a bunch of I guess gig workers, for lack of a better term, freelancers. And the discrepancy between the execution based kind of, I will do CRO for you, and the strategy side was so much larger and than I expected, I guess. And the level of talent that is out there on these gig platforms looking for fractional stuff or even project based stuff was phenomenally high. Like I'm looking at that and I'm like, well, that's a $350 a year plus job if you had a title at like a actual standard company.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of comments backing up everything we're saying too. And to Jess's point, choosing fractional because full-time isn't an option. It kind of backs up what we're saying, just like how slow the process is for hiring these full-times, because they might be more open to just doing a quick startup with the fractional versus
for sure
taking the time and the investment with a full-time, VP.
Well, how much, like it takes a week to get an LLC set up at this point? You can throw up a website tomorrow. Like if you have the Rolodex, it's easy. It's almost like why would you jump through all those hoops to get a job that's gonna
and somebody was asking, Kristen was asking, like, where can you kind of find these things? Or no, sorry, Janine was. So there's a couple places I've noticed, like Catalent, and we can send these out on the chat afterwards too. Catalent is CATALANT. It's a work platform for more high-level consultants to bid on project work. It's not like an Upwork level where I think that's kind of like maybe lower pay, smaller projects. This is higher level roles, usually people with Fortune 500 experience and or agency experience at a strategy level type work. So I would highly recommend that if you're interested in that stuff. Otherwise, to Nick's point, putting a website out there, going on LinkedIn, finding some of these, companies within the industry experience you have, doing direct reach outs, offering, services. And even if you're looking at full-time roles and you really like a company and you can tell they're kind of hemming and hawing, I mean, what does it hurt if you're comfortable doing fractional to just throw that out there? Like, hey, we can try this out and see how it works for both sides.
Yeah. I've even seen it where some director level talent, VP level talent will do that kind of thing while they're in that job search. Yeah. If that job search is taking 6 to 9 months, like you might as well do some fractional work in the meantime, just to keep stuff going.
Yeah. definitely a trend I've been seeing. I know we're at 12:25 and we'd like to keep these things, quick, action packed. Any other last questions, comments from people they
I
want to
think
get
Matt had
into?
one. Matt
Okay.
had one about retainers becoming more difficult
Hmm,
to obtain, and what's the best way to maintain revenue consistency? Are we headed towards agency commoditization?
great question.
Um,
Right
you're
person to answer
always
it. Perfect
you're
person.
always headed towards agency commoditization. That's how it works.
Yeah.
New tech comes out, and agencies are fantastic at it. They jump on it. We're all nerds about this stuff, and we figure it out. And all of a sudden, we can create value where other things didn't exist. That's new tech, and the tech that was new tech 3 to 5 years ago slowly gets in-housed and slowly becomes commoditized. Social media posting was like a big deal 10, 15 years ago. Now those are like factory style agencies. So there's this push consistently
Good
to
point.
commoditization. You're always having it. Um, Separately though, like if you're going to build an agency with some kind of sustainable revenue growth, um, you can have a mix of retainer and project that works really well, even if retainers drop off, if you have a repeatable rev gen system. This is something I've been like, I wrote like 100-page guide on it like a year ago. And then I published it, and then people were like, hey, you wrote this guide, can you help us? I was like, yes, but it's a much larger engagement. So this year, maybe in January, I launched a repeatable RevGen service just for that. And I've gotten to talk with and work with companies all the way from like 10 employees all the way up to like 400 employees. And so what I found is that if you build out some kind of like single source of truth, write down everything you're doing in your RevGen strategy and have a purpose for everything that you do. I'm telling you all of the secrets now, so I guess you don't have to hire me, but like write down everything that you're going to do in that kind of single source of truth and refer back to it whenever that like new shiny object syndrome happens.
Yeah.
And check it against that single source of truth. That is the biggest thing that can help an agency get some kind of consistency to their revenue cadence. It's not this boom bust roller coaster of like, oh God, when's the next project coming? Once you do that and you implement it well and the strategy is sound, you can really build a consistently growing agency just with a good RevGen system.
Hmm. And do you think that's applicable too to some of these kind of more freelance fractional type people?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, for sure. For
Like I
sure.
saw
Like that's very
Robert,
much as like,
yeah, I haven't. Hey, Robert, I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see your name pop up. He made a point with video. Are you kind of seeing that too in the spaces with agencies, like with video type stuff? Like, how do you kind of?
what's funny with video is I have a client right now, and they're talking about how they would love to offer video, but the cost to implement that and build that into their agency is too prohibitively high for what they'd be able to do with it. So video is this weird thing where it's like it's not yet commoditized. It's on the way, but it's not there yet because there is such a production level difference between the like meh kind of okay stuff and the really good stuff that like wins awards.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the use case too, right? Because I mean, some
Yes.
platforms might be expecting low budget.
Yes.
Some platforms or use cases are definitely a lot more professional level. And to your point, you need, it's not just a intern walking around with their iPhone camera.
I mean, sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know for the sake of your time too, we should probably be wrapping up here. And I want to say thank you. Your insight is fantastic. Everyone should connect with Nick. He knows his stuff clearly. Everyone just saw that. And I know he's a giving, happy to help kind of person too. So definitely reach out to him. Reach out to me. I'm always happy to help and have conversations too. If you're job searching, looking to hire, or if you're an agency struggling with how to hire and then also manage freelancer bench, we do all of that for you. So you can focus on rev generating activities like Nick was saying. So definitely reach out to us. Thank you everyone for joining. The comments were really engaging. It was good to see everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you soon on the next LinkedIn Live.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, John. This was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Have fun doing that woodworking this weekend. And
I gotta go figure it out.
Yeah, I'll send some projects your way. Maybe a couch. I don't know.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
All right. See ya.
Take it easy.